I know what you may be thinking. Did I accidentally step into a freaking time machine and travel back to a year ago? Because Mark's uploading another Good, Bad, and Ugly and it's on the 350Z? What? I've seen this already. What's going on? It's okay, buddy. You're still here. It's still 2022. You didn't fast travel. What happened was we got into a lot of trouble with copyright a little while ago, and so I had to take down a couple of my videos. I also stopped doing Good, Bad, and Uglies because it scared me. It gave me a little bit of a woo, a little scare, but a lot of you guys are commenting all the time to bring them back, and so I decided I'm going to bring them back, and I'm going to start with the 350Z because it's one of the videos that I unfortunately had to delete due to the copyright things, and so it's not on my channel anymore, so we're going to do it all over again. Plus, that was my first Good, Bad, and Ugly ever, and so I had a lot of things wrong back then. I didn't really know what I was doing back then. And so it's nice to touch up on it anyway. And it's my car, so I love the car. But yeah, don't worry. We're back with the Good, Bad, and Uglies. And yes, we will make up a couple of the ones. We only had to delete like 3 or 4, I think. But we will make up those ones and we'll do them. And we're going to start with the 350Z. So if you want to see any other cars, leave a comment down below of that car. Check the playlist to make sure the car isn't already done. And if it isn't, then go ahead and leave a comment and I'll get it done. But anyway, guys, if you want to support the channel any more than you already are, head on over to www.smoothstance.com/shop to pick yourself up a hat, shirt, or shorts. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So the way this works, in case you're new here or in case you just forgot since it's been such a long time, is first I go over the car, is like history, everything about the car, its engines, its trim levels or whatever. Then I go over the modification side of it, like what people typically do when modifying these. Then I finally get into the good. Then I go over the bad, and then I go over the ugly, but we'll get into that when we get them. And then I give you a conclusion at the very end if I think the car is worth it for you or not. Anyway, let's start off with the actual car itself. The Nissan 350z, or Fair Lady Z if you live outside of America. It was a 2-door, 2-seater sports car that was built from the years 2003 to 2009. And it went through 0 quote-unquote facelifts throughout that time, but it did get some changes, and we'll go over that. This was the 3rd generation of the Z cars, 4th if you want to count the Z31 and Z32 as 2 separate generations, but it absolutely lived up to the Z name extremely well, actually, and was almost immediately loved with no real complaints, and I don't think it ever really has had complaints. There's never been a time where the 350Z was a hated car. It's always just been, accepted. Now, the Z does have some trim levels to it, but if I'm being honest, the only ones that actually makes a significant difference is the Nismo model, but there was only 5,000 Nismo models ever made, and so those are going to cost you like upwards of $20,000. They're very expensive. But the normal trim models are as follows. You have the base, enthusiast, performance, touring, and track models with only very slight differences between them. Some of them have different spoilers on the back, some of them have different wheels, some of them have different brakes, some of them have traction control. I will say the base model has easily got to be the worst model, obviously, but this one more than like other cars because the base model is the only one that comes with an open differential and no traction control, while the rest of the cars, they have limited slip differentials and they have traction control. As you all know, the car did have 2 different body styles for it, a 2-door coupe or a hatchback, if you want to call it that, and a 2-door roadster that just looked absolutely hideous and nobody really wants, to be honest. Next is the engines, and this car only came with one single engine, I guess. It's the 3.5 liter V6 and it was called the VQ35, but from the years 2003 to 2006 it was called the VQ35DE, and it made 287 horsepower. It had 1 intake, and it was a nice engine. It was a pretty good engine. But then they changed it in the years 2006 to the VQ35HR, and that one made 2007, my bad, I said 2006. They changed it in 2007 to the VQ35HR, and that made 306 horsepower and was much better for building power on. It was a much better platform if you wanted to get more power out of it. And of course, in case you're wondering, the main way to tell the difference between the two is the hood. The DE hood has 2 lines and is way more smooth, while the HR hood has a very large like bump in it, and so if you notice that, you can tell if it has a DE or HR in it. The car was offered with an automatic or a 6-speed manual transmission, and all variants were rear-wheel drive only, so you can't get an all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, making this an obviously great choice for drifters on a budget. Now it is time for the modifying world of this car and what people like to do with them. And 90% of the time when you see a modified 350Z in 2022, it's going to be for a drift build. Like I said before, it's just almost perfect for drifters because it has plenty of power, it's rear-wheel drive, it has a manual transmission, and a limited slip differential for all under $7,000 easily. On top of that, the parts to replace are very cheap and is very easy to do for the most part. But You do get your fair share of stance guys too that like to just make these things look sick, since they do have very good lines just to look cool in general. So they have these, you know, a lot of people out there that have negative 15 degrees of camber on their 350Zs, or huge wide body kits like Rocket Bunny stuff. Stuff like that does definitely get done with the 350Zs too. Stuff like rally racing and circuit racing aren't really seen that much with these cars, but that doesn't mean that the car isn't good for it. It's just been outclassed by now. It's a very old car. People have moved on to better things. And of course, drag racing is barely seen in imports in general, but when people usually do drag race imported cars, they usually go for something like a Civic or an Evo because of the highly tunable engines, where the 350Z doesn't really have an engine that's like that, so they kind of stay away from the 350Z in terms of like drag stuff. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible to make these cars fast. There's a guy on YouTube named Fresh Kicks, if you want to go check him out, that has an 800 wheel horsepower 350Z that has an unopened engine, which is just very impressive to say the least. Go check him out if you're interested in that. Okay, now we're actually into the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm going to explain how this works really quickly. First off, we're going to go over the good, which are things that are just great about the car and you can't deny are awesome things. Next is the bad, which are kind of like take it or leave it. It's up to you if it matters or not. Some people can be like, oh, that sucks. Some people can be like, oh, that's pretty cool. And next is, finally would be the ugly, which are just going to be things that like you cannot deny are just bad. They're problems about the car that you're going to have to address. But we will start off with the good, and right off the bat is the price. These are, in my opinion, the best budget car out there right now. You get so much for so little. It's insane. But finally, people are starting to realize that, so they are going to be rising soon in price. So if you want one, get one now. Next is the fact that they are rear-wheel drive with a limited slip differential. It's just such an absolutely good car to learn drifting on, or to just have a good time doing donuts. And limited slip differentials are also very good in just normal racing too. It helps a lot in that. It's absolutely just an amazing combo there. Rear-wheel drive with an LSD. You can't go better. You can't be better with that. Next is the engine power is very good for a stock car, especially at its time. 300 horsepower for under $7,000 is extremely hard to find, and the 350 does it while looking cool. Next is they are kind of a jack of all trades. You can make this into literally anything you want. Just go out there, build it, have fun. Next is they look good. That's obviously personal opinion, but I mean, come on, dude. The 350Z looks sick, okay? You can't tell me I'm wrong about that. Next is the aftermarket support is absolutely huge for this car. When I wanted to buy a front bumper for it, it took me like 2 weeks just to choose which one I wanted. But also, the aftermarket support is also extremely cheap too. So if you are on a budget, don't worry, modifying the car isn't going to be that much money either. Next is the community is absolutely massive. I mean, the VQ gang, VQ community, whatever you want to call it, lives strong. And while the community isn't just 350Zs, in my opinion, it's kind of cool that we do have like G35s, 370Zs, 300ZXs, G37s, and really like any Nissan sports car on our side. It's just awesome. Next is the manual transmission is one of the best transmissions ever made, period. The CD009 is the name of the manual transmission found in the 350Z, and people put it in literally everything from boring little Miatas to 1,000 horsepower Supras, okay? If you hear somebody talking bad about the 350Z transmission, just know that they're trying to be different. And finally, for the good is the reliability. They were voted the most reliable V6 of the 2000s, and they hold up to that. They get their job done in terms of reliability. Now it is time for the bad, which are things that are kind of up to you if you like it or if you don't like it or not. And first off is going to be the sound. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people say it sounds like a trumpet. I don't mind it personally. I like it, but here's a listen. Next is the fact that they have no space. If you want to get this as a family car, don't. It's a bad decision. Next is the DE's potential is extremely small. You really have to build the whole motor for this thing to even work at all. But the HR is very good. So if you want to build a decent horsepower car, definitely go for the HR one. If you just like the 300 horsepower and you're happy with that, DE will work fine. Next is the reliability is only good if you find one that hasn't been beaten to hell. But if you find one that hasn't been beaten to hell, then it's probably going to cost you a little bit over $10,000. And so, you know, if you are a mechanic and you can fix things, then I would recommend just buying one that's, you know, been beaten. But if you aren't, then you're going to have to spend a little bit more. Next is the Roadster model. Just looks absolutely god-awful. I'm putting it out there. I don't like it. Next is the crankshaft and camshaft position sensors are faulty all the time. These things freaking break like a white girl who is just told that she can't have like a white Jeep for her 16th birthday or something. I don't know what they like anymore. Next is the doors seem to be made out of titanium, and they're going to crush your shins if you're not careful. This has happened to me a million times. You open the door, go to step out, it comes flying back and just clobbers you, and it's not fun. Next is these cars like to eat oil, so make sure you always keep your eye on oil levels, and you should be pretty fine. Keep like a quart of oil in your car at all times. Every once in a while, just go out and give it a check. I usually do it once a week. Just check it. It can't hurt to check it. It takes like 2 minutes, man. You don't want your engine to blow up. And finally, for the bad is the gas mileage. It isn't awful, but it ain't good either. But you honestly should probably expect that with a sports car. I don't think you're expecting to get like a Prius levels of gas mileage in a 350Z. Now for the ugly. Ooh, ewy. But we only have 3. Okay, so that's very good. You know, usually we don't have a lot of uglies for cars, so typically it's pretty good. But one of the major ones is the space in the engine bay. It is incredibly small and cramped, and it's near impossible to change anything like motor mounts. I had to change motor mounts in my 350Z. Oh my god. That was a nightmare. It hurt. It hurt so bad. It's a common Z problem. Every like Z has it. 300Zs, 370Zs. They're always like really big motors stuffed in very small engine bays. But geez, it is just not for new mechanics, so if you don't know what you're doing, don't buy a freaking 350Z. Next is these cars have an insanely high crash rate, and the reason that is a thing isn't because they are very hard to control, but it's because a lot of young kids get these cars since they are so cheap, and they don't expect them to be as fast as they are, or they just don't know how to handle the speed. So please be careful if this is going to be your first car, or at least like wait until you know what you're doing to buy one, because we don't need that crash rate to go up any higher. And finally, for the ugly is the insanely poor wiring. Nissan's wiring system has always just been kind of a joke, and they were just not thinking when doing the wiring for the 350Z. Electrical things will go wrong a lot, and when it does, it's an absolute nightmare to fix. My 350Z went into limp mode one time because I put freaking LED taillights on it, which just blew my mind. I was like, how is this even happening? I put LED taillights on it, and it just didn't want to go over 2,000 RPMs anymore. It was just ridiculous. The MAF sensor, I don't know why I said MAF. The MAF sensor is another one that seems to be a problem for lots of people. Personally, I haven't had a problem with it yet. And don't even get me started on how many times my O2 sensor was being finicky, but that's also probably because I'm lowered and it scrapes on a lot of things. But still, the O2 sensor are always a problem. There's a lot of wiring problems with this car, so if you're afraid of wiring, probably shouldn't go for it. So, in conclusion, do I think that you should buy a 350Z? Absolutely. For almost anybody, I think it's a good choice. Maybe if you are like a new driver and you live in a winter area, you should probably reconsider because it isn't the most safe for like daily driver for snowy conditions. But if you are looking at it as it should be looked at, as a fun weekend car, or even just a daily driver in a nice weather area, then it's an absolutely great choice, man, and you will have a blast owning one. Just make sure it doesn't have like electrical problems when you're going to pick it up, and you should be fine. Also, I highly recommend to take this car a little bit more seriously than people online do, because they are sports cars. They are rear-wheel drive, and they do have 300 horsepower. I know a lot of people make jokes about 350Zs, oh, it's slow, whatever. I don't care. I'm just trying to help you out here, trying to keep you safe. They are fast, okay? They are not something that you can just mess around with and have a blast. You can have fun with them, but you can't just like go out there and just do whatever you want with it. You have to learn the car, okay? You have to treat it well, and it will treat you well. If you care more about like straight line speed, however, I think there's many better choices, especially if you plan on getting a DE. If you're looking for like literally just going fast in a straight line and you don't care about cornering or anything like that, look into Corvettes or 335i BMWs. Those are very good options, but 350Z, especially the DE one, is probably not your best bet. But that is going to be the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And yes, they are here to stay. I don't know how often I'll do them. Probably like once every week and a half, most likely. I'm not going to do it every Sunday anymore because we upload every other day now, so I can't, you know, dedicate one video a week to being the good, bad, and ugly when there's only 3 videos a week, if that makes any sense, or 3 or 4 videos a week. But we're going to try our best to keep these getting out there. So if you want to see a car that I haven't done before, absolutely leave a comment down below. But make sure you check the playlist and make sure I haven't done it before yet, because I don't want to, you know, you don't want to waste your comment. Because if I see it, I'm just going to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I already did. It's just pointless. But yeah, we did have to delete a couple. We had to delete this one. We had to delete the 335i E90 generation BMW one. We had to delete the G37 one. And then I think we had to delete one more, but I can't think of it. But we did have to delete a couple of, the Pontiac GTO. We had to delete the Pontiac GTO one. So if you want to see any of those are also options that could be done. But anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Das Vidania, and have a nice night.